Wonderful. Thank you, Senator Alexander. Senator Alexander, I can pay the highest compliment I can pay any elected official, and that is to say that he is a true pragmatist. Whether the idea comes from the Republican side, the Democratic side, the right, the left, the conservative, or the liberal, if it's a good idea, Senator Alexander is a supporter because he cares first and foremost about the people of this state and about the worthwhileness of an idea. And I thank you for that, and I thank you for being a friend, not just to me, but to the people of this state and to higher education as well. You heard Tom Mulliken say that we grew up across the street from each other, and that he remembered me as a kid when he looks at me. That's because he's a little bit older than me. But when I look at Tom Mulliken, what I remember is a guy that had hair. It's a long time ago, wasn't it, Tom? So to Professor Mulliken and Virginia Ann, thank you for being friends and for the great work you're doing. Both of them truly are leaders in my local community, and I believe in the state of South Carolina, and in the nation, and truly internationally, and they both have done work across the world. And it's wonderful to be here with you. To my friends on the Public Service Commission, thank you for the leadership that you provided and continue to provide. It is good to be here at Coastal. My father was the Commissioner on Higher Education and helped guide Coastal Carolina from a 2-year branch satellite campus to what you have today, and I am certainly proud to have been to inherited a small a part of the pride of that. I come today, I knew that Senator Alexander would give us a great welcome, and I thank you for doing that. It is an honor to be a co-chair with you, and I knew that he would give us a good catch up on the way things are working in South Carolina and the way policy is developing. And so I'm going to take a little bit of a different tactic, and I'm just going to talk about two things that I really like. My hometown, Camden, South Carolina, and fishing. So I believe, and I know some of you in the room, especially those of you who are in science, sometimes get frustrated that policymakers, elected officials, tend to make decisions not based on statistics or science or calculations, but on something that you don't really even understand. But I'm here to tell you that what the people in this state and the country, and I'm sure the world, reflect in their elected officials is decisions that are made not necessarily on the cold calculations that might be the truth, but on experience, on emotion, and on very personal impacts that have occurred to them. And so that's why I want to talk briefly with you this morning as we begin this tremendous day, talking about two things that I like: my hometown and fishing, because I believe the decisions I make and everybody makes are informed directly by what they experience in the most personal ways, whether it's in their home, their backyard, their town, their state, their country. And I believe that each of the choices that we have to power our country, our communities, have good and bad. And the decisions that we made are directly affected by how we experience those. I'm here and excited to talk about natural gas because I think the experience that I've had in my hometown has been one that's been positive. But energy and the different types of energy are tools for humans. No different than a hammer. It can be used to build a house or it can be used to tear things down. It all depends on how we utilize it, whether we're responsible or irresponsible, what our goals are. Camden, where I'm from, where the Mullikens live up the street from me, is an incredible place. It's a small town. See, the senator from Walhalla says it's a big town because Walhalla's even smaller. But it's a small town. It's a small town with a long history. It was there was a incredibly large, relatively large, Indian settlement that formed there back before the white man came. It formed there because Camden is located at the fall line in South Carolina, where the rocks of the state give way to the floodplains of the state. And there was fishing opportunities, and the Native Americans would fish and cast nets and spread them across the river, and you can go today where they did that and caught fish. There was an incredible Native American civilization that was there. And when the Europeans came, it was the hub of the backcountry in South Carolina. It was as far as you could go up the river from Charleston in a boat because you had to stop at the rocks. And so Camden formed, and it was a hotbed of patriot activity during the Revolutionary War. Many famous people have come from my community. Mary Boykin Chestnut, whose diary is perhaps the best history of what was going on in the South during the Civil War. Bernard Baruch in the early 1900s, who became an incredible financier in the nation, was an advisor to Woodrow Wilson and presidents. The first African-American baseball player, Larry Doby, in the American League in the mid-1900s. And then, of course, Tom Mulliken. So, many great people. And it's a great place. Many fabulous things happened, and one of the things that happened on those rocks was that a dam was built in the early 1900s by Duke Power, backing up those waters. One of the other things that happened is that Vincent Sheheen was born in 1971 to the parents of Fred, or to the child of Fred and Rose Sheheen. I was the only grandchild of my grandfather, Austin Sheheen, who was a boy. 10 grandchildren. I was the only boy. He liked to fish, and that meant that I got to go fishing O'Neill a lot. I grew up fishing in the Watery River and the Watery Lake and ponds and creeks and streams all across that area. But in the mid-1980s, in Camden, South Carolina, there was a ban placed below the Watery Dam in the Watery River on certain species of fish and numbers of fish that you could eat because of mercury. Everything that we do, I believe, comes from the experience we've had. Mercury, I know many of you know, has a drastic impact on human life, on animal life, on vegetable life over time. It's not one of those things that happens immediately in small amounts, but over time it affects us. In human health, it affects visual issues. It can cause brain and nervous issues. It can cause reproductive problems. It's especially dangerous to women who are pregnant, nursing, about to conceive, to young children, including the 3 that I raised and the children that the Mullikens raised over their lifetimes. These are things that I worry about because these are things that occur where I come. Children are 4 to 5 times more sensitive to mercury than adults. Mercury exposure over long periods of time can cause behavioral problems. It can cause a host of problems in our children, in plant life, in animal life. And it always bothered me that there were restrictions on my Watery River that I like to fish in on what I could catch and eat. We know that it causes reproduction problems in fish, in mammals, and just to put it in perspective, for those of you who are old enough to remember that when thermometers were made with mercury, by the way, we banned that about 4 or 5 years ago in South Carolina, Center Alexander. One thermometer containing mercury is enough to kill all of the fish in a small 20-acre pond. South Carolina has a particular problem with mercury. 35 rivers, creeks, and streams have been found to have high levels of mercury. 17 lakes. I don't know how many lakes we have, but that's probably about all of them. Mercury gets in our body through bioaccumulation. When fish eat smaller fish, and then those fish get eaten by bigger fish, and it accumulates until we eat them or animals that have consumed them. People love to fish in South Carolina. 45% of the people who fish in South Carolina are from places like Senator Alexander and I come from rural areas, small towns and cities. Another 31% are from mid-sized communities. So these are people that you would see in Camden or in the surrounding areas, or Walhalla in Oconee County. Right here, nearby, the Great PD River and the Little PD River have serious fish prohibitions, including an outright prohibition on eating several species of fish. The PD area in South Carolina and the Santee River Basin have especially high levels of mercury in fish compared to almost anywhere else in the country. And the Santee Basin, where I've canoed and fished and enjoyed myself, is one of the 5 most methyl mercury contaminated basins in the United States of America. Now, I'm not here to beat up on coal because, as I said, every type of energy has good and bad and is a tool depending on how we use it. But we do know that it is a fact that the burning of coal contributes approximately over 80% of mercury emissions in the United States. and I know our friends on the PSC know this better than I, but one of the things that the boom in natural gas has allowed in South Carolina is the closure of, I believe, almost 8 coal-fired units in the last 4 years. As we've seen the cost of natural gas and the boom of natural gas occur over the last 5 years, what we have seen in South Carolina is an increased usage at a fair cost to provide electricity and power to our consumers, while at the same time it's allowed us to take old, antiquated, coal-fired power plants offline. And the result over time, I believe, is that in basins like the one I live in the Wateree River, in the tremendous community of Camden, over time we'll see those mercury numbers, I hope, diminish. And in the future, these increases that we've seen that have caused the inability for folks to enjoy their natural environment, whether it's fishing or eating those fish, hopefully to improve. Every decision we make as policymakers is informed by people like you. Senator Alexander mentioned the fact that we passed an important solar energy bill just a couple years ago that is having repercussions and important effects even today. I remember well sitting around a room just like this one with people just like you that had been convened to discuss issues just like this. And from that came ideas, pressure, experiences that resulted under Senator Alexander's leadership in the passage of solar energy bill that can move us forward. I hope that today the ideas, the sparks, the experiences that you share will inform us and everyone around this table so that we can have an enlightened policy around natural gas that will help to move this state, which I love deeply and which many around the table do as well, move forward. So I want to say thank you. I'm excited to listen. I'm excited to learn. And I'm excited to take those lessons back to Camden, South Carolina, and think about them when I'm fishing in the Wateree River. Thank you.